G'day, welcome back to another one of Nathan Bell's excellent commentary videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might be interested in this topic. Today, Nate's going to talk to us about dropout culture.
Yeah, well, so many people are against dropout culture, but dropout culture has always really appealed to me because I'm a bit of a hermit, and I'm also very religious, spiritual. See, dropout culture is more than just the hippies dropping out and going and living in a hippie commune and doing acid all day and singing kumbaya around the campfire. There are other ways to drop out of society. You might be the monk who chooses to abandon society in favor of life at a Tibetan monastery, practicing Buddhism. That's dropping out of society. You might be the hermit who wants to live on your own on the outskirts of society and not interact with anyone because you don't have the best social skills, or you just have become bitter and you don't like people, or you might just not have that desire to interact with the rest of society. So those things are dropping out as well. And I want to say we have the right to drop out. Well, everybody says you're obliged to take part in this society. My view is no, you're not. Any individual has the right to reject society. And again, it's like the monk who chooses to go and live in the monastery and practice Buddhism separate to the rest of society and rejecting the conventions of society. And also, rejecting society can be the greatest act of protest as well. And that's one reason why I sort of, to some extent, reject society, because I disagree with many things in our society: war, conflict, the abuse of people in poverty, homophobia, racism. I disagree with all these things which are so prevalent in our society. So I reject society as an act of protest to say, I'm not satisfied with this society, so I will not participate because it offends me. So I will not participate in a system and a society which offends me. And I've always historically been an anti capitalist. I've come around to capitalism in the last few years as I've gained an enhanced understanding of capitalism. But in the past, I would have said I refuse to participate in a capitalist society because I disagree fundamentally with capitalism. So rejecting society can be an act of protest. But I do like that idea of living on a hippie commune with a bunch of like-minded people, and being self-sustaining and having solar panels and farming our own food and having our own water supply, and in line with that, not paying tax to the government, because we're our own self-sustaining community. And some people can say that's a bit like joining a cult. That's fine. I'd love to live in my own little community with like-minded people who reject the conventions of society and to live our way with the land, and to live as a self-sustaining community, not dependent on the rest of Australia, but separate and as if we were our own nation. And as I said, in line with that, not paying taxes to the state because we're not dependent on the state. But this is the key thing about dropping out of society and living independently from the rest of society: is you've got to be self-sustaining. And I'm not self-sustaining at this point in my life, so I certainly can say that I reject society all that I want, but I'm actually dependent on society because I'm on Centrelink and I use NDIS, so I'm dependent on the rest of society, and I'm dependent on Australians' tax dollars to fund the things that I'm doing and to fund and to provide my income. So I'm certainly not independent from society at the moment, and that is the key to dropping out of society: is you have to be self-sustaining. If you're going to reject society, whether as an act of protest or just as a lifestyle choice, you have to be able to sustain yourself separate to society, or you'll just die. Um, but yeah, I've often thought I'd like to reject society in favor of living in a Buddhist monastery and practicing Buddhism because I like Buddhism, and that would be that as I said, that is dropping out of society as well, to devote yourself to a spiritual religious practice which is separate from the rest of society. So that appeals to me as well. But yeah, I really would like to live self-sustaining on my own property by myself, because sometimes I find people quite frustrating, and I could easily see myself rejecting the rest of the community because I disapprove of some of the attitudes in the community. So it's an act of protest. And I would love to reach a point in my life where I could have my own property, my own land, with my solar panels. And with my own water supply and growing my own food and be completely independent and off the grid. And I think more people should be off the grid. Why do we have to be dependent on the power grid. We want more people's homes self-sustaining. We want more self-sustaining homes that produce their own energy. But these are the practicalities of living separate to society. You have to be able to survive. See, once you reject society, it becomes a matter of survival. So you have to be able to provide your own energy, your own food supply, your own water supply. You have to be able to do these things or you will just die. So you can't just have some delusional fantasy about dropping out of society and taking acid all day and singing Kumbaya around the campfire. You need to have those survival skills. But yes, that does really appeal to me, that dropout culture. And I do argue that nobody is obligated to participate in society. If it is within your means to be self-sustaining and to separate and detach from society, and that's what you desire to do, I argue that is your right. And I view that as part of my philosophy on my take on liberalism and individual liberty, is that any individual is not obligated to participate in society. We have the right to detach and separate, and that may be an act of protest because you dislike society. I've had a lot of problems with people over the years. There've been a lot of attitudes that have bothered me. There are a lot of things that offend me. So there are a lot of very realistic reasons why I reject society. But as I said, unfortunately, I'm not self-sustaining and I'm actually almost entirely dependent on the rest of society. So I can't proclaim that I would be considered a true dropout, but I certainly do reject in my mind, I reject many of the conventions of our society. And in my mind and my mentality, I do see myself as an independent thinker separate to the thinking of the rest of society. And I do see my thinking as detached from the rest of society and that I have rejected the status quo of society. So there's some of my thinking on dropout culture. I also want to say, if people want to go and take acid and smoke pot, as long as they're safe and they don't hurt themselves, I'm okay with that as well. And why not sit around the campfire all day with your mates and live on a farm and not work? Why do you have to take part in this economy? Why do you have to be a part of this 9 to 5 grueling, submit your life to the economy and be a slave to make somebody else profit? We're not going to work for your corporations. We're not going to fight your wars. That's what Timothy Leary said, and I agree with that. We're going to drop out and we're going to say, fuck your society. We're not going to work for your corporations and we're not going to fight your wars. We're going to be independent. We're going to live on hippie communes and we're going to have our own society. So I wish I could live that way. I'm not at a point in my life now where I can, but I aspire to that and I say that's a good thing. So drop a comment in the comment section about what you think about dropout culture.